Well, let's get going. It is just 8:30 here Eastern Time in Michigan. Hi, I'm Chris McKenna with Protect Young Eyes. So glad that you are with us here tonight. This is our third evening of doing the Tech Ready Parent. We had a great presentation and turnout this afternoon for the first rendition of this, and this is our evening presentation. Or if you're joining us internationally, maybe it's first thing in the morning for you. It's been such a joy. I went back and looked at the registrations, and we've had 12 different countries represented on these webinars in the 3 times that we've done them, which is just fabulous. And so today's, I think, is going to be helpful. At least I truly hope it is a topic that I feel very passionately about in terms of us getting it right, and as many parents and grandparents and others as possible feeling equipped to have this conversation, and that is pornography. So this is me. If we've met, excellent. If we haven't, I'm happy to be with you here digitally. We've been doing this at Protect Young Eyes from our very beginning was back in 2015. What do? We help families, schools, and churches create safer digital places. And how do we do this? Through free content like this webinar, but also custom talks. We do a number of those that are getting scheduled for the fall. Even if we can't be there in person for a live talk, we have custom webinars that we're doing for a number of schools and churches. And then also excited to announce that we have an app that is in process that we hope to release this summer. So be on the lookout for that. A couple of Zoom helps. If you're not super familiar with the tool, if you look down at the bottom of your screen, you can chat, which is public for everybody to see. I'm joined tonight by my friend and colleague here at Protect Young Eyes. This is Doug Crawford. He's going to be manning both the chat, which is public. If you just want to say hello or maybe where you're from, that would be great. And then there's also a Q&A where you can do exactly what it says, drop in a private question, and Doug or myself at the end will answer those questions or get back to you if we don't know the answer right away. Some of you have asked for a certificate of completion that will be available on the link that you'll get afterwards. There is a certificate that you can print off. You can write your name in. This is a screenshot. I know it says Snapchat 101. That's from last week. It's just a screenshot, but there is one on the download website. And when I say download, there's a page that you'll have a link to there. You'll have this certificate. You'll also have a PDF of this presentation. And then we also upload a recording of this presentation to YouTube if you want to share it afterwards with somebody that you might benefit from it. So you can see where we've been. Some of you have watched both of the previous presentations on the Toxic Trio and Snapchat 101. Today, the Skinny on Porn. You can see where we're heading, where we have TikTok coming up next week. And then in June, I'll be releasing registrations for June within the next couple of days, hopefully before the Memorial Day weekend, which is a holiday here in the US. But you can see we're going to be speaking about predators, YouTube, Netflix, and Instagram. And then I actually have a whole another set of 4 that we could do in July if that's something we want to do. I'm just having so much fun doing these, and we may just keep going. We'll see. We have a growing YouTube channel where you can subscribe to us, these videos and other tutorial videos on Disney Plus or Android or iOS, other things. We're growing our presence out there. You can go and subscribe to that at any time. And so a bit of recap, we did the Toxic Trio 2 Thursdays ago, a third Thursday, but 2 weeks ago, where we spoke about 3 conditions: nighttime, bedroom, and boredom. And those 3 things working together can sometimes create a risky digital environment. So if that sounds like something that maybe resonates with you, please go to YouTube and watch that webinar. Last week then we spent time unpacking Snapchat's features, and there's a number of them, but the 6 that we focused on were filters, Snap Maps, Snap Stories, Discover News, and Chat. So if Snapchat, even if it's not an app that you have a child currently using, chances are your child is being influenced in some way by somebody in his or her network that actually is using the app. That's the case with my own daughter. I have a 15-year-old daughter, and Lauren does not have Snapchat, but a lot of her friends do. And so we've spoken about it. She knows all about it. So let's start off with a fun poll question. You know, here in Michigan, we are still under fairly strict orders that are hopefully going to be lifted next week in terms of the pandemic that is being experienced all over the world. But there are a number of funny, call it that, stereotypes that I have found to be true for those of us that are stuck sheltering at home. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off a poll here. We'll call them quarantine stereotypes. Go ahead and pick the stereotype that fits you the best. Zoom calls without pants, the online shopper, The quarantine 15, meaning that maybe you've gained a little weight because, boy, it's so hard not to eat when we're stuck at home. The corona cut, have you given or received a haircut at home that maybe didn't turn out quite the way you wanted it to? Virtual learning, not. What screen time rules? Just leave me alone. Or then finally, puzzles. More puzzles, please. Which one of those quarantine stereotypes fits you the best? Go ahead and give me your responses. Fun seeing these answers come in. We'll shut that down in 3, 2, 1. I'm going to end that poll. We'll share the results. Oh, it looks like Online Shopper is the winner. Earlier, it was what screen time rules, just leave me alone. But boy, it looks like we have somebody, at least one person, multiple in every category. Well, that's good. Thank you so much for sharing there. We'll have other questions that you can participate in, but our foundation at Protect Young Eyes is we believe that parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, whatever role you find yourself in, who are observant, engaged, and informed, often have kids who learn how to use technology well. If we do these things consistently and persistently enough, not always, I can't promise, but it tends to produce a predictable outcome. And so you've seen it before, but I want to keep saying it. This is what we call our continuum of digital trust. On either ends of this continuum is where we don't want to be, right? Either a place where we are taking withdrawals or eroding digital trust because we are overprotective, we're too controlling, we're teaching technology out of spirit of fear instead of a spirit of empowerment or confidence, and that erodes trust. It robs it from our young people. On the other end, out of a spirit of just apathy or let them figure it out, whatever it might be, we also have a spot there where we're just not creating any digital trust at all. But in the middle, the hard work in the middle, friends, where we're doing some of the things that you see there in those looping circles, where we are modeling the right behaviors, copy me, we're doing things with them online, watching videos, playing games, we're curious instead of condemning about their technology, right? We're having open and honest conversations, and not just parental control, but caring control. These are words that are very important to us. And if we do these things, they tend to create a culture in a home that creates digital trust. And that's what we want, especially with the issue of pornography that we're going to talk about today. Having a state of digital trust is so critical because young people and adults, when we get into something that we don't like, and often we don't like how we feel when we're stuck in a cycle of pornography. We all have this little lying voice in our head that is telling us that we can't tell anybody, or you're horrible, you're dirty, just keep it to yourself. But if there's digital trust, then we're willing to open up and share about pornography in this case. And I just find that to be so, so important. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Again, if you have any questions or comments, please drop those into the Q&A, and Doug will do his best to keep up with those. And if you have any left over at the end, we'll stay on, and Doug and I will stay on as long as we need to answer those questions. But as you've heard me say in prior presentations, I'm a numbers guy. I was a CPA before I was working in internet safety. And so when I see numbers, they help me make sense of things. And 25% is a number that represents, according to the Reward Foundation, a European research foundation, they found that when it comes to the unfiltered internet, video content on the unfiltered internet, that 25% of it is explicit. Now, in a lot of things, 25% is not our goal. If you look at grades, we don't want to be getting a 25%, or if we're an athlete, 25% of most sports and whatever it is, unless it's maybe soccer, for example, usually isn't an awesome percentage, right? Maybe free throw shooting. You don't want to be a 25% free throw shooter. But when it comes to the internet, friends, that is a massive number. And so to put this into analog terms for just a minute, imagine for a minute while I was growing up, right, years ago, a young boy, and imagine in my living room where I grew up that there were 4 magazines on the coffee table in the living room every morning. One of them was pornographic and 3 of them weren't. And my parents just hoped that I didn't look at the wrong one. That is the equivalent of 25% of the unfiltered internet having pornographic video content, which is why we must work hard in order to protect and equip our kids to deal with it, because sooner or later they're going to bump into it, no matter how hard we try. So we have to both protect and equip. But we have to talk about the brain. In order to understand fully the issue of pornography, it's critical for us to understand the human brain. And friends, I don't just come at this topic from an academic sense or even from a practical sense, because I've been a youth pastor and I've worked with kids, and now I work at Covenant Eyes where I work with adults who struggle with this issue. I look at you through this camera lens on my computer, and I can say that as a man who myself struggled with pervasive use of technology, but also pornography, I am speaking out of a spirit of I get it. Like, I understand some of these things that I'm saying because I lived some of these things. And now as I watch some of these things playing out in our young people, I just have such empathy for the digital world and the situations that they're in, because even as an adult with so many more tools than they have, I struggled. This is an issue that we have to unpack, but it's worth understanding our brains, right? Whether you have faith or you come at this from a secular scientific perspective, the brain is the most amazing machine on earth. Some of the numbers behind the brain are just, well, they're mind-blowing. 400 miles of capillaries, over 100 billion cells. And friends, the brain is, yes, endlessly complex, but it also is amazingly simple in how it functions. And I'll decipher for you what I mean by that somewhat paradoxical statement here in just a minute. But first, let's also understand what is different about the adolescent brain. See, if you've had a teenager in your house, or you currently have a teenager in your house like I do, there's a reason that they're fine one moment and 2 minutes later, the world is just falling apart. And that's because neurologically, there is a fireworks display of neurological activity that is going on inside of the adolescent brain. That their brain is under a massive deconstruction and reconstruction process, which causes them to sometimes not quite know how to process things and maybe sometimes overreact to situations. So if I use a word like neuroplasticity, some of you are going to know what that means, others don't. In neuroscience communities, they speak about the brain as being a plastic organ, not ceramic or rigid, but plastic, meaning that throughout our lifetimes, our brain can adapt, relearn, and rewire itself should we ever experience any significant brain damage or other injury. That's important, right? In the teenage brain, this is abundantly important because the brain is very shapeable, that there are neural pathways that are being constructed during adolescence that we carry into adulthood, because there's this synaptic explosion that's going on. Billions of neurological connections are being created, new ones. And then the brain, through a process of use it or lose it, determines what neural pathways are used most frequently. And so it then solidifies and myelinates those, right, well into our 20s. For men, young men, it's usually well into our 20s. For women, maybe a little bit sooner. But that myelination process of solidifying the brain continues on, and those neural pathways that aren't used are pruned away. In other words, the brain fashions itself into a more efficient organ so that it works faster. In other words, if you're having the same thought or the same stimuli is hitting your brain, and there's a pathway that is being hit 10, 11, 12, 13 times, the brain is going to look for ways to make that happen faster by pruning away some of the pathways that maybe are in the way of that thought from occurring. Efficiency is king. So earlier on, I said the brain, for all of its complexity, operates under a very simple principle, and it is this statement on the screen, is that for all of its complexity, the brain operates according to a very simple principle. Whatever I feed my precious brain is what it learns to love, especially before age 16. I want that statement just to sink in for just a few minutes. In other words, the things that the adolescent brain experiences are stickier than things that we experience later on in life, because our brain is slightly more ceramic during that stage. It's a little more resilient, right? It can handle a little bit more than it can during the adolescence. So that's a really important thing to understand. So let's just start off now, before we get into some of the deep parts of this conversation, with poll question number 2. What do you believe is the right age for us to begin talking about pornography. I have 4 different spans up on the screen there: less than 5 years old, 5 to 7 years old, 8 to 10 years old, or 11 and above. When do you think is the right time to have in-depth conversations about what pornography is? And we'll shut that down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to end that poll. We'll share the results. So less than 5, 13%, 5 to 7, 26%, 8 to 10, 29%, and 11 plus, 33%. Now, many times people will ask us at Protect Young Eyes what we believe is the right age to start talking to kids about pornography. Now, friends, here's the thing. I don't know your kids and I don't know your family, but if you wait until you're ready, it's too late. Something that I often say to parents is whatever number you think it is, subtract 2, and that's probably the right spot. In other words, I want their ideas, and regardless of what they are, I want their ideas about what pornography is and is not to be so deeply ingrained from you that all the other exposures from friends, from the school bus, from other devices, from culture, from social media, they bounce off of that framework that they already have and they go, nope, that's not what it is. And they see and they understand your perspective because they've been hearing it for so long. That's just something maybe to keep in mind. When it comes to the brain, specific to the issue of pornography, these are some neurological things that are going on, right? Pornography is a supernormal stimulus. It excites the neural pathways in the brain more than other stimuli that hit our brain. That's why scientists call it supernormal. It fires up our dopamine reward system in a big way, right? And so when we're exposed to sexual stimulation, be it with pixels or people, we have this extreme focus and this motivation towards more of that. And that fires off other neural hormones like norepinephrine, right? That shot of adrenaline that we get, that increased memory. From working with adults who have struggled with pornography, one thing that almost all of them can tell me, and that is the very first image that they ever saw. That norepinephrine creates that stickiness with that image and they remember it and they can years, decades later, tell me exactly what that exposure was. Oxytocin, that bonding, right, that goes on. Oxytocin is something that is released if you give somebody a hug and you hold that hug for 6, 7, 8 seconds. There is that dose of oxytocin in our brain that says this is a trusted, there's this neurological bond that goes on with that other human being. But as a part of the sexual release cycle, there's also oxytocin that can be released as a part of the pornography and then self-stimulation process, where you're actually bonding yourself instead of to people, to the pixels and the images that you're seeing on the screen. And then afterwards, right, if you follow this all the way through, there's this release that happens through climax and then serotonin comes into play and there's this calm and this satisfaction from what just occurred, right? And in their right context, in the way that they were made to be experienced with human to human intimacy, these things are great and they bond us to other human beings, but pornography hijacks those things that were meant for good. And if you look at some of the impacts then that pornography has, it's a horrible teacher. It's teaching our young people with silent parents, right? Porn loves silent adults in the lives of our young people. Why? Because it has a whole different agenda and it's very effective at teaching. It's very effective at teaching our young people things that just aren't true, right? It's teaching them that violence, and so much pornography is violent, right? Now, I'm not trying to insert myself into your bedroom and tell you what is right and wrong in terms of your sexual appetites, but what I am telling you is that regardless of those adult tendencies, when it comes to sexual templates that are being created in our young people, that neuroplasticity that is so open during adolescence, if their initial exposures to what is good and right related to sex and intimacy are what they see in pornography, then you're setting them up for a framework and an expectation mindset that is vastly different than what most partners want. It can lead to depression because they don't like what it does to them with the distraction and the shame cycle they fall into. In young men, we're seeing an epidemic of young men in their 20s who are so addicted to pornography that they no longer are stimulated by real human women. I am telling you, when my Facebook feed is full of erectile dysfunction pills being offered by Roman and other places, when young men don't find other women sexually stimulating, we have a problem. And it's pornography. Let's just call it what it is. Pornography teaches us selfishness. It's looking out for me. It teaches me to objectify others and see them as a thing to satisfy me instead of a real person. And it causes a lot of deception. All addicts, whether it's to porn or any other substance, they're liars. And it gives them they get very comfortable in that deception, that lie that they're telling themselves and often telling others. Porn is a horrible teacher. And so I don't want this to be just all the bad news. I want us to get into a few things that we can do. And there's others, but these four I think are so critical for us to turn the tide here, to go on the offensive and to get in front of this issue. And they are to normalize porn. And don't freak out when you read that, right? There's some context there that you're going to get in just a minute. So to normalize porn, get to know your router, don't freak out. I'll explain what I mean by that statement, and then to get help if needed. So number one tactic against what I'll call the pandemic is to normalize porn early. Make the topic of pornography, the word pornography, the subject of pornography so normal that it's spoken about openly and frequently in your house. Take all of porn's curiosity, shameful, like power over our young people away from them because you have made it just so easy to talk about. I could tell you story after story about how we've tried to do this. Now, we are far from perfect, Andrea and I, but how we've tried to do this in our home. And one of the more poignant stories that I can tell you just happened back in March before the pandemic, where we went to an indoor water park. It was still fairly cold here in Michigan. And I was in a changing room with my son, Blake, my 8-year-old son, Blake. I have two twin sons, Cole and Grant, and the four of us were in a changing room there for the water park. And here's my 8-year-old son, Blake, standing in front of a mirror, moving his hands. He's naked as can be. He's moving his hands in front of and away from his boy part, saying, porn, not porn, porn, not porn, porn, not porn, covering them up and uncovering them to himself in the mirror. And I'm just standing there in this changing room, just laughing to myself. And it's this, to Blake, it's no big deal. It's a word. We talk about it. We've talked about it for years. He knows what it is, and he knows what to do and who to talk to and what to say when he experiences it. And if that's something that's uncomfortable to you, don't worry. We have some helps for you. We've written a blog post that'll be included in the post-presentation email that you'll get, how to talk to a 5-year-old about porn. There are some other stories in here. I could tell you story after story from myself and others about how this conversation can go at an age-appropriate level. Also, if you go to our website and click into the resources, you're going to see things that we have trusted. We don't recommend anything we haven't tried on our own kids. And right there in the middle, you'll see books that we like. And if you click there, you'll be taken to some resources, some of which I'm sure some of you are familiar with, whether it's Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, or there's What on My Phone or the TechWise family, just some books that can help you get started if you're not sure how to have that conversation. The number 2 tactic against the porndemic is this: to know your router. Now, if you were with us during the first webinar, the toxic trio, you're going to recognize this one because this was important there. Friends, I think the number 1 tool we have to help our families use technology at the right times and in the right ways is to have the right router in place. The one that you see on the screen is a Griffin router. We have a Griffin router running in our home here. We've also used an Eero router. There are a few out there that are good. Some of you might be familiar with Circle, which can also be good. Maybe not quite as appropriate for older kids because it is fairly easy to circumvent. But if you go to protectyoungeyes.com, click on devices, you're going to see a whole wall of the different devices that we have parental control guides for. But at the bottom, you're going to see wireless routers. And if you click into that, you're going to see where we recommend different routers, some light ideas for how to set them up. Again, here clicking into Griffin, it's just so important for us to get that router right, whether it's with our own kids, whether it's with others who visit. Maybe not a lot of that happening right now because of the pandemic, but relatives and others, it's so important to get that home network right. And here's the great thing. In the case of Griffin, just like with Circle, you can then port or have those same home network controls take place outside of the home when they're on data. It can be in both places. So you're going to want to read more about that on the website and to check that out. The number 3 tactic against the porndemic is this: practice being calm. Don't freak out, don't freak out, don't freak out, don't freak out. In other words, don't be the reason that they don't come back. The first 2 tactics that I shared are more on the preventative side of this issue. These last 2 tactics are more on the reactionary side of this issue, because chances are sooner or later, no matter how hard we try, a young person that we know and love and care for is going to be exposed to pornography. And so how we react to that is so, so important. They need to know certain things. If they have the courage to actually come forward and to say, I have a problem and I don't like this, or I saw something, our response to them, that first response, all the way down to our facial expressions, can tell that young person whether or not you're okay, whether or not that digital trust is true, and whether or not they'll come back when it happens again. And chances are it will. And so some phrases that they don't have to be exactly this, but I think you get the spirit of what we're trying to say with some of these phrases of, I'm so proud that you came and told me that there's nothing wrong with you. You know, how did it feel when you saw that? Talk to me about that, right? Those feelings. Give them permission to forgive themselves. Everybody stumbles, fall down 7 times and get up 8. We can do this. We're going to get through this. I promise that there's nothing that you could ever do that would change that my love for you, nothing. Encourage them. Let them know that there's hope. All young people have these little this radar that's up all the time, and they're asking some questions like, am I okay? Am I going to be okay? They're looking for that approval, whether it's from something that they've done like this or just throughout the day. They're always looking for that approval. And so they need to know that it's going to be okay. So friends, please don't freak out, whatever you have to do. And then finally, the number 4 tactic against the porndemic is this: to get help if needed. Don't let your pride as a parent, that I can figure it out on my own, we can figure it out on my own, we don't need to get anybody else involved. Now, chances are, many times, for just light exposures, accidental exposures, curiosity exposures, yes, you can have these conversations. And many of you have and will do that very, very well. But there are some situations that likely require more help than what you can offer. Remember, this is a very important developmental time. And in the same way that neural pathways can be taken a wrong way and be directed toward a path that we don't want, there are neural pathways that can be rewired. Remember, the brain is plastic, and so we can rewire as young people understand better why they think the way that they think, maybe with therapy. And so notice the signs. These are 4 signs that we have in our own experience through research and talking to counselors ourselves that we should be looking for to know whether or not we may be in a situation where something more than just our help is necessary, that my child's behavior is excessive, they can't stop. My child's pornography preferences are hardcore, bizarre, and are illegal. My child is engaging in sexual activities or strangers that they've met online, or that finally they're saying it. I've had, just this week, I had a mom come to me and say that her son wanted counseling. I said, great, run toward it. Find counseling while he is willing. And so friends, back to this continuum of digital trust, you can see some of the things that we've covered tonight around conversation, around that caring control when it comes to the router, around being curious about the things that they're doing online. And my hope is that over the next couple of weeks, as we have time at Protect Young Eyes, we want to put together actually a video series around these 5 words, because they are so, so important. And when it comes to protecting young people, there are a lot of things legislatively that we think need to change. And so if you're unfamiliar with us as an organization, we are constantly fighting for changes in laws that are decades old that no longer protect our kids. We started the Fixed App Ratings movement, which is looking for more transparency and greater accountability in both the Apple App Store and Google Play. And so friends, it's really important for me to know from this information and the others, the other webinars that we've done, whether or not you feel better equipped in this particular issue. I'm going to launch this poll. Now, if you don't, here's what I would say. If as a result of this, you still don't feel as though you have the tools necessary to talk to your young person about this topic of pornography, when you get the email after this presentation, reply to me, and I will personally respond to you to give you all of what I know on whatever it is that is still causing you a problem or still causing you concern. We'll do our very best. We may not have the resource ourselves. We may be able to point you in a direction. We have a lot of colleagues and friends in this space. We will do our very best. And so it looks like most of you, yes, feel equipped and empowered. That's great. But a few of you don't, and that's okay. This is a tough, tough topic. And so for those of you that don't, please let me know. I would like to help you in whatever way that we can. I'm going to go ahead and end that poll now. There's a lot of different ways that you can stay in touch with us at Protect Young Eyes. Just search for Protect Young Eyes in Facebook, Instagram, and also our YouTube channel. You can also text the word protect to the number 66866. If you're outside of the United States, you can, through our website, put your email address in there. We've now done 3 of these webinars. I hope to see you in those that are coming up. And that is our evening or morning, wherever you happen to be, presentation of the Skinny on Porn, the Tech Ready Parent. I'm so thankful that I had this opportunity to be with you tonight. If you've asked questions in the Q&A that haven't been answered yet, please stay on and Doug and I will answer those now. But for everybody else, I hope you have a great rest of your night or day. Take care.